Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to talk about why some avoidants run from connection and what you can do to actually make them feel more comfortable being connected to you. A disclaimer, which a lot of y'all probably expected, had another not so good day. I'm going to rant for like a minute and then we can jump in, but you can skip. I think it's so interesting that a lot of you guys are like, oh, why do avoidants come in for therapy? And a lot of them don't even want to be here, first of all. But often they come into therapy when it's like the most, when everything is completely falling apart, to which they almost have no choice but to look in the mirror and like take a look at themselves. Some of them might even be like extreme cases where it's like they had an attempt on themselves. Like, does that make sense? I can't explain that on YouTube, but they are, hurting themselves, or they're doing something that's really dangerous, or they're on the brink of divorce. And sometimes still it's hard for them to take accountability for what happens, or they're so devastated they're begging and trying to fix everything all at once without realizing that you have to take it slow. And it's a very frustrating and interesting dynamic. And then some of them in couples therapy, they understand what they're doing, but they don't want to change because they're afraid of what things can go wrong. Like, I have some couples where, like, let's say I have a husband and a wife. He might be, she might say, we've been married for, like, let's say 9 years, and he's never said, I love you. And then I might ask, do you love her? And he'll say, well, I think I do, or I do, but I don't want to tell her because then she'll get the wrong idea, or then she'll have expectations for me. And at that point, it's kind of like, you have to manage it a certain way. Either she has to accept it or he has to start compromising. So sometimes these situations are like really tricky. So it was just one of those days. Anyways, let's first talk about avoidant behavior and why they kind of run from connection. Often, avoidant individuals actually avoid initiating contact, especially after conflict or breakups. And this is typically their belief that they feel like the decision has been made, or they can't change your mind. Or if they try to change your mind, that's, wrong for them to do. It's too vulnerable for them, okay? They struggle with emotional coping, and they may prioritize covering up their feelings instead of prioritizing how they feel about something. And so if they were to choose between prioritizing having a feeling versus, so if they have an extreme feeling or if they can suppress it, they typically will choose suppression. So if you guys have a big fight, often they're going to prioritize not feeling the emotions of that fight. So they may, pull away, push away, or act like it never happened. And so often you're going to perceive that as them avoiding connection from you. They have a fear of vulnerability. And often what's going to happen is they actually avoid chasing their partner. And we're going to talk about ways for them to kind of do that. First, I want to get into the barriers, which I'm doing right now. And then we'll get into suggestions for you guys so that they can feel a little more comfortable connecting, okay? They don't like that kind of chasing behavior because it puts them in a vulnerable position. Like I was, ranting about in the beginning of this session. Wow, my head's all over the place. Beginning of this video thing. Sorry, guys, I'm lost for words completely. This recording, I was mentioning that a lot of them will avoid even saying something that will give their partner an idea they care because they're afraid that means you're going to expect something. So sometimes they're not going to chase you because they feel like if they do show you their entire heart, you're going to expect more and more from them. And then that means that if they can't reach that or do that for you, they're a failure. And that's going to make them feel horrible, right? And so they may hesitate to express their feelings for that reason. And another one is often avoidants are very comfortable in solitude. So they may find it easier to be alone, and they feel like it's less complicated than pursuing connection, which makes them resistant to initiating relationships or taking you out of the friend zone. Sometimes it's easier to just say you're a friend, even though you're not, because it creates this dynamic of decreased pressure, okay? And like I had mentioned, the other reason is because of that fear of failure, okay? That's really common. So what can you do so that avoidants are not running from connection? The first one is we want to reduce criticism. This is one of the most common dynamics I see as a therapist towards an avoidant, where they are in a very critical environment. And I want you guys to realize what you perceive as critical is what they perceive as critical, is a better way to put it, is probably something you don't perceive as critical, okay? So you might feel like the environment is not critical, but they might think it's very critical. And so this perspective is why a lot of times couples mess up with this particular one. Sometimes it's important to realize what they perceive as criticism. You guys might say, oh, they're too sensitive, or they're too reactive to certain things, or they're triggered very easily. By you saying that, that is criticism. I know you might not say it out loud, but also you're actually not listening to what they're saying and what they feel. If they're saying it makes me, your expectations are too high. That's a really common one, that they think your expectations are too high. That's their perception. They are too high for them. For you, you might think the bar's on the floor, which from your perspective, fair. But this difference of perception creates this dynamic where the avoidant is thinking, okay, we're not similar at all. This relationship is not going to work because I'm not budging. You're not budging. What can we do? Who's going to budge? I'll try to budge, but I feel like I can't. And then you're thinking you can't either. So their mind typically is, okay, this connection isn't valuable. And so what you can do to help them feel a little bit more comfortable is listen to what they're saying and often reduce that criticism. The next one is offering praise. Any sort of effort they make, even when they initiate communication, acknowledge their efforts, okay? This is really, really important, okay? I can give an example. The first one that came to my mind is a bit of a personal example, but it's something that even in long-term relationships, you have to remember, okay? I used to, have this attachment style, and my partner did as well, and we still have those dynamics. And if you don't want to hear this, just skip like a couple minutes. So we had an argument recently to which for like a year now, I've been saying that I'm trying to change something, a little personal between us, but I'm working on it, right? And it's something that he wants changed and expecting that, fair. And I want him to change things too. So it's not like he's just asking me to change, okay? And during this communication, we were kind of having a bit of an argument. It was late at night. He just came back from playing cards with friends, and it was late at night before bed, and we kind of got into it. And he was saying something like, well, I brought up the argument, something a little bit out of context. And then he was like, oh, you have been doing this or saying this, that you're going to change this 10 times and you have been failing. He said that word, which is a trigger of mine. And he's like, maybe you don't even want to change. And that really bothered me a lot. And that I don't normally shut down the way I used to, but it was not a good moment for either of us. We got into a fight, whatever it was, like verbal fight, of course. Little bit of a disagreement. Then we went to bed. The next morning, work. And then after work, we went to the park. And I was still not feeling good about whatever was going on. And I'm a person who has changed a lot. And I was still really pulled back from him. When we were driving to the park, he's usually driving. Actually, he's always driving when we go places together. And usually I put my hand on his leg. If it's like a back road, the park is very close, or he puts his hand on my leg, something like that. There's some sort of physical like connection between us. And like, I was not comfortable doing that with him. And when he put his hand on my leg, because he was fine, I was like not comfortable reciprocating. I was really not feeling comfortable. I was still pretty upset that he said that. And he did apologize like 3 or 4 times that night, but I still was not happy with it. But anyways, when we went to the park, I was still pulled back, and he was talking and trying to make me feel better. I knew that he knew I was upset, and I was trying not to show it. And then what he did was, instead of saying, tell me what's wrong, what's bothering you, which doesn't always work for me, he offered praise. He said something along the lines of, you know what I said yesterday? I shouldn't have said that, but I want to say that I actually do notice how much you're improving. And that immediately made me feel better. Like immediately I was talkative again. I was happy again. I was more affectionate again, because I didn't realize that's really just what I needed. Now, often he knows me well and I know him well. And we've had issues with this before, like vice versa as well, because we both struggle with this. But praise does so much for an avoidant. I don't even know how to explain it. Just say that you're doing well. I see your effort. It's going to fix so many issues. I can't even explain it. Even someone as self-aware as I am, or I try to be, I still need this. I still need acknowledgement. I need it a lot, actually. I'm being honest. It's like, you know how a lot of anxious, preoccupied people need reassurance? Praise is something that avoidants need. Acknowledgement, praise. I see that you're doing it. I see your effort. I do. I need this. He needs it too. And this is something a lot of avoidants need. Eat fearful and dismissive. So just keep that in mind. This is one of the best things you could give an avoidant, okay? The next one is provide space. Allow avoidants time to express themselves without interruption, right? Don't interrupt them when they're talking, because some of them take a while to talk because it's really hard to articulate words. You guys see me do that all the time. It's really hard for me to communicate. I need time to do it. A lot of avoidants are like that. Don't interrupt them, and reduce pressure by saying, are you saying this, or interrupting, but also let them have space to process. Sometimes it's not going to be, verbally. They're going to need some time alone. Give them time to sit by themselves, do what they need to do. Check in on them if you need to, but give them time to process things, okay? The next one is practicing patience. I know this is annoying, but you need to be patient with avoidance. Otherwise, it's not going to work. The relationship's just not going to work. Avoidance may not initiate contact. You can't play games and then stop initiating contact as well. That's not making any sense, because your issue is not that. You have a different issue. That's their issue. You can't take space of their issue, because that's not fair for them. They need to step up and fix that, but you need to be patient. It's like if somebody has a substance issue and now you're saying, okay, you have a substance issue, then I'm going to have one too. What does that do? That's not your issue. Your issue is probably that you're reinforcing that, or you're enabling that. You work on your issue, let them work on theirs, give them space to do that. Practice patience on both ends, but don't do silly things like that. I know some of you guys do that. I read your comments. Don't do that. The next one is encourage communication. Encourage it every now and again. I just gave an example that was personal about my partner. He did encourage that communication. He said he was giving me space a little bit, and then he opened up and talked about it when he realized something was bothering me. Another example that could have worked, depending on, how bad whatever the disagreement was, you can say something like, I noticed something's on your mind. Can you tell me what's going on? Because if you don't know what's on their mind, then obviously you can't reinforce with praise. He just knows me well. But any example, encourage communication. How was your day? Or I appreciate when you open up. Thank you for sharing that. Whatever it may be. These are some of the examples. Let's go ahead and summarize, and then we're going to wrap it up, okay? Ways to help a partner not run from connection is to reduce criticism, offer praise, provide space, practice patience, and encourage communication, okay? I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.